Hello and welcome. This is a new lecture in your course Linux for Absolute Beginners by Avionics. My name is Ahmed, and in this section we are discussing Linux command line. Now let's have a look at how to get help inside your command line session. The first and the most commonly used command to use here is the man pages. I bet you've heard this term lots of times, the man pages. I'm looking at the man pages, I'm using the man pages, but what is a man page? Man stands for manual, which is just the first few letters of manual. Most of the commands you will see on the command line, and when I say most because some third-party programs do not ship with a man entry. This is rare, but it happens. Some of the commands do not have a manual entry. They may have other forms of documentation, but most of the commands will have a manual entry. They will have a man entry for them. In order to display the man page of a command, you would just type the command man, M-A-N, followed by a space, followed by the command name. And commands are not the only ones that are referenced in manual pages. Also, configuration files, libraries, and other parts of your Linux installation will be referenced inside one of the man pages. However, and as we are going to see in this lecture, we are going to view the man pages. They can be extremely useful, but they should not be treated as a complete tutorial or a documentation. They are just a reference to a command, how to use it, what it is used for in a very brief form, and all the arguments and options that this command may take in order to perform other functions. So let's have this example. Now we have worked several times with the ls command. Ls is just displaying the current directories and folders in your current directory. If I type man ls just to see what does this command offer more than that, maybe it offers more functionality that I'm not aware of. Okay, as you can see here, the first line here is name ls list directory contents. The usage is ls followed by one or more options followed by a file or a directory. Now let's have a look here. It has a description which will be more verbose than the name, list information about the files, sort entries alphabetically if none of those options nor ---- sort is specified. And these are the options that the ls accepts. As you can see, it has a lot of options, like for example -l, the most commonly used one is -l, which will give you a full listing. Full listing means the permissions of the file, the time it was last modified, and so on. We're going to see those later in a future section. We have here -h, which will give you a human readable format of the size of the file, and other options. It is one of the commands that has a lot of options, and it offers a lot of functionality. And here you'll find something called the exit status, and the exit status is just a number that specifies whether or not the operation performed by a command was successful or not. So the convention says that if the exit status is 0, then okay, the command performed correctly and no errors happened. If non-zero, it depends upon the developer. Every developer will have a number that references what sort of problem happened. So here, for example, I have 1 if minor problems, like for example, cannot access a subdirectory for a permission problem or something, and 2 if a serious trouble happened, cannot access command line argument. So these are mostly used in shell scripts, as we're going to see later in this course, that you take the exit status of a command and accordingly you tell the user a friendly message about what possibly might have happened with the command in order not to run. And finally, we have the author, along with other information like where to report bugs, what is the copyright of using this command, and it also has a link to other documentation. You can know a lot more about ls by visiting this URL. Okay, and man pages consists of 9 sections. When you type man ls in the previous example, it displayed section 1. So what are the sections for? These sections are designed to specify different sorts of information about the command or the file that you are viewing. So for example, when I say man ls, the first section that was displayed by default is section 1. And section 1 was displayed by default because it is the most used section in man. It is concerned with executables and shell commands. And if you want to see the difference between different man page sections, the most prominent example is the password command. Let's have this example in order to understand the difference between sections. Now I have a password command. Password command, as you can see here, is just a command that is used to change the password of the user. And if it is used by root, it can change also the passwords of other users. but that's not our concern now. Let's exit from this. Okay, but you also have a file that is called /etc/password. This file contains information about users in the system. Let's cat this file, and cat is just a command that displays the contents of the file that is passed in as an argument like this. As you can see, this is information about all the users on the system. Don't bother yourself with the contents of this file. We are not concerned with the contents of this file for the time being. Just understand that we have two forms of the word password. One of them is a command and another one is a file. So when I type man password, which of those is going to be displayed? And how does Linux know whether I am looking for information about the command that is called password or the file that is called /etc/password? Let's press enter and see. It has given me the section 1 of password. As you can see here, the section number is displayed in rounded brackets right after the name of the command. So password between brackets 1. And as you can see here, it is displaying the contents of the information about the command, password, change user password, and it has options followed by login and so on. Now, what if I want to display the file format or how to understand the file that is called /etc/password? I will have to pass in the section number that specifies the type of information that I want to retrieve about my query. So, for example, instead of typing just man password, I will type man followed by 5, which is the section number, followed by password again. And as you can see here, a totally different content has been displayed, starting here with the name password followed by 5 in rounded brackets, which means that I am reading section 5 of the man page about password. And as you can see here, it is a completely different information. Password, the password file, and this is the contents of the file. It contains one line for each user account with 7 fields limited by colons. These fields are so and so. So this is different than man password. As you can see, the difference here is that this is section 1 and this is section 5. So as a rule, if you want to display information about a configuration file, you will have to pass in 5 as an argument to the password command. But there are other sections of the man pages that might be useful, especially if you're a developer and if you're working with the C language, for example, and you want to develop a library or further develop the Linux kernel, you may want to look at those sections. So we already mentioned that 1 is for executables and shell commands, 2 is for kernel system calls, 3 for library calls, 4 for device files, 5, we have already seen that, for file formats, 6 for games, 7 for miscellaneous character set standards, standard file system layout, and others, 8 for system management and administration commands, like for example the mount command. And here is a very important note. If I type man mount, and mount is one of the administration commands that are only used by root. If I type man mount and press enter, as you can see here, notice here that it is displaying by default mount, and here is section 8. Why is that? That is because mount was not mentioned anywhere in the man pages except in the section number 8. So if man tried to display for you the contents of section 1 containing the mount command, it will display nothing because mount is not mentioned in section 1. It is only mentioned in section 8. So the man page will display the section where the command is available, whether it is section 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, or 9. The confusion will only arises when you have one word that happens to be present in 2 sections at the same time, like password. In that situation, as we said, you will have to explicitly pass in the number 5 before the word. So let's say, for example, I passed in man 1, which is section 1 for mount. If I press enter, you will see that no manual entry for mount in section 1. Okay, and it is advising me to type man 7 undocumented in order to give me some information about manual pages that are not available. But actually mount is available. The thing is, it is available in 8. So either I type in explicitly 8, or I just omit it like I did, and it will display for me the information about the mount command. Okay, and finally 9 for kernel functions and routines, and most of these sections are of more use to developers than average users. A user will often be interested in section 1 and section 5 most of the times. Now we have seen how you can use the man page in order to get information about a command or a file. But what if you just want to have a brief summary about the command? You just don't want to enter a full man page, you just want to know what this command does, and more importantly, whether this command occurs in more than one man section or not. So for example, the password. In order to do that, you have this handy command which is called what is, just like that, one word, what is, followed by the command or the word that you want to query, let's say password, for example. If I press enter, as you can see here, I have 3 entries for password. First one is password as a command in section 1 of the man page. It is used to change the user password. Then password again, that is referenced in section 1 in the SSL section, and it is used to compute password hashes. This is another command that is called password, but it will give you a slightly different behavior. It is used here to compute password hashes. And then finally, password in section 5 of the man page, which is a file, and this is the password file. So here I have both the description of the command or file and also the section of the man pages where I can have more information about this command. If I type, for example, what is ls, ls is a command. It is not present in any of the man pages except in section 1, and it lists the directory contents. If I type what is mount, mount here is present in 2 locations on the man pages. Mount as an administrative command and mount as a system call. So let's type man2 mount in order to see this system call, to see the difference between different man pages. And as you can see here, if you've worked with the C language before, this is just a function or a system call in the kernel that can be used inside a program. This is not the command. This makes sense only to a developer or a programmer, somebody who is familiar with the C language. As you can see here in the title of the page, this is Linux Programmer's Manual. So what we should be interested in is the first entry of the what is, which is the 8th section of the man page. Now in the next lecture, we're going to see how we can navigate inside the man page. So see you next.